Hey, what's up, everyone? Hope you are doing well. For those that have been following along, feeling much better today. It's a beautiful day and start of the new year here in January 2024. And if you know the drill, hop to about 120 and we can begin. If this is the first video you are checking out of me, hello, my name is Nick Kleitch. I am the creator of the Life with Nick YouTube channel and the host of the Life with Nick podcast. Just to be very upfront with you, my channel is predicated on just a couple things. The first is that I read and teach a personal development book a month, hence a handful back here. But yeah, that's what I do. That's what I like to do. I find a lot of value in that. And if you're someone out there that's an everyday person like myself that is just kind of curious about that genre, I've covered a handful of books thus far and will continue to just cover a variety of things. Generally, they're under the nonfiction umbrella, but some are under the fiction umbrella as you can get some good messages from that genre as well too. So if that's for you, definitely subscribe to the channel. Check out the library of books that I've done. Would love to have you in the community. The other thing is I do host a podcast that I deliver once a month with another everyday person. I like to give voice to everyday people because I think they're highly entertaining and great people. So if you want to learn more about that, go to the YouTube channel, go to the website through that, and you can kind of get a little bit of a scope on me. So let's dive into the book of the month. And this month, that book is The 5 Major Pieces of the Life Puzzle by Jim Rohn. We have covered the first 2 major pieces to that life puzzle, which brings us to piece number 3. And I got to tell you guys up front that this is probably my most appreciative video in this whole series for the content that we're going to be covering today. So I'm super jacked up to get into it. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive in. So now that we've discussed the internal battle of our minds, right? And with that, kind of the 2 major pillars of our foundation, which are personal philosophy and attitude, we begin to focus outward on how to leverage that foundation. Think of it this way. We've been training ourselves, or we are training ourselves for a battle. And yet the first battle that's always fought is within one's mind. Now that we have awareness around that battle's going on, we can begin to train and practice our minds for when we enter into the marketplace. We will always enter and exit the day by working into the first battle by entering the real battlefield of the marketplace. As you can tell, if we don't have our shit together internally, we're going to perform like shit externally, or we're going to perform well externally, yet when we come internally to fight that first battle of ourself, we're probably going to sabotage our success. So we begin this video with a story that actually comes from the Bible. And if you read the Bible often, this is the story of the parable of talents. If you have not read the Bible, that is okay. I will give you a very easy synopsis here. So a master of a household announced to his house that he will be embarking on a long journey. He gathered his family around the table and told him that he will be gone for quite some time. To his first child, he gifted 5 talents. To his second child, he gifted 2 talents. And to his last child, he gifted 1 talent. Now, he did caution them to say, hey, be wise with these talents and look after them until I return. So he goes on the journey and he comes back and he is greeting his children. And this is kind of the synopsis of things. So the first child, while he was away with the 5 talents, went out to the marketplace and doubled his talents, turning 5 into 10. The second child, seeing the success of the first child, also went to the marketplace with 2 talents, and she was able to turn those 2 talents into 7. And finally, the last child, observing the other 2 siblings going out in the market, got kind of scared. He didn't want to risk losing his only talent if things didn't work out for him. So, paging back to the father, as they're sitting around this hypothetical dinner table, he engaged with them and said, hey, when I was gone, what kind of all happened? And he was excited with the first 2 children because they had gone into the marketplace and doubled their talents. When the last child announced that he safely buried his only talent to keep it protected, his father was disappointed. He said to his last child, please give your talent to one of the other 2 siblings. For if you're not going to use your talent, you're better off. It is better off in the hands of the other 2. So now the message here is somewhat brutal in the sense that, life may not be fair. If the cautious one, held the cautious talent and they lost theirs, they might look like a genius, right? But for the parable's sake, what this is really painting a picture on in our third major piece is that if you don't use the talents that you've been gifted, life will not provide you with a proper reward. So just as a quick pause before we continue on here, maybe if you're in a spot in life where you feel like you maybe just haven't quite got to where you see yourself as, or things aren't maybe working out for you as well as you thought, maybe we're not looking as productively internally to understand our natural talents and gifts and then leverage and strengthen and develop those talents in the marketplace so we can be paid for the value and the gift in which we're giving to the marketplace. So just something to consider. So life was not designed to give rewards proportionate to our level of need. It gives them in proportion to what we deserve. Whatever life has handed us, whether 1, 3, or 10 talents, it's our responsibility to use what has been given to us as an offering to God in the marketplace, in service of others. This is how we turn pennies into fortune, by taking all that we have and all that we are and putting that to work. Sooner or later, we must put our knowledge and ability into activity. This is why starting with a sound personal philosophy and possessing the right attitude is so important, right? Because now we know how to fight that battle of the mind, and now we're launching that into the marketplace. The more we know and the better we feel, the better chances we have for success. And then as a caveat here, no matter how good or how good or sound our philosophy is and how well our solid attitude is, none of that really matters if we're not putting that to action, which is kind of the main takeaway of that little top portion here. So next piece, why sometimes we get stuck on the ground floor. We all know good people who have good education and treat people well, yet they never quite seem to quote unquote get ahead. We also know bad people who try to get rich off of everyone else, who possess a poor character potentially, yet sometimes those people end up winning more than the people with good intentions. The reason for this could be as simple as their level of activity in the marketplace. Though the recipe that they're using is bad, if it gets marketed well and tried enough, that bad product can turn into a fortune. This also tells us that if you have pure intentions, which I hope you do, a good character, and a meaningful product, it should be your obligation to produce and market effectively what you have to offer. Evil always rushes in to fill the void created by the absence of good. So if good is never being output, evil will slowly start to creep in, and that is the fine battle that the marketplace has to work with. The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good people to do nothing. And unfortunately, there's way too many good people that choose to do that. Imagine now for a moment, we're going to turn the page, how different our world would be if everyone made a commitment today to put action to their best ideas. It's a really cool thought, right? If everyone gave 100% at their jobs, their family, their communities, their physical, mental, and emotional health, what an incredible difference that could make. What a life that they could then share with our families, a life filled with challenge, excitement, and achievement, and what an inheritance we could leave to the next generation, a wealth of virtue, integrity, and substance with which to build a whole new world on the grandest scale. And all of this because we cared enough to do something with our lives and put our skills and talents to work. I love that. Now we're going to get into some tactical pieces here on activity. Enterprise is better than ease. So just as a general question, how hard should we work on our dreams, right? How hard? What is the actual measurement? Fair question, right? Sometimes we don't even examine some of these baseline questions. Our philosophy about activity and our attitude about hard work will affect the quality of our lives. What we decide about the rightful ratio of labor to rest will establish our work ethic. Furthering this ratio concept will determine how substantial or how major that fortune turns out to be. So this is essentially saying to us that A, how hard should we work, correct? And then B, knowing how much effort we put into that over a period of time could maximize or minimize the dreams in which we wish to achieve. Now, as a general rule of thumb, enterprise or work is always better than ease. Every time we choose to do less than we could, This error in judgment has an effect on our self-confidence. Repeated every day, we soon find ourselves not only doing less than what we should, but also being less than what we could. The cumulative effect of this error in judgment can be devastating long term. And the reason that is put in there, in my specific opinion on Jim's writing, is that these are the folks that get to the mid or end part of their lives and they look back and they go, you know what if, right? What if I would have done this? What if I would have done that? So it's kind of a wake-up call, and I'm sure those people would advise any young people to in fact move forward in those desired endeavors. And so this is just kind of that wake-up call to say, hey, if you're putting off or you don't put the level of work in to get to where you want to go, there is a finite amount of time, and eventually you'll get either the reward or the pain of regret, which we'll get into in a little bit. Fortunately, it is easy to reverse that process. And I love this next piece here. Any day we choose to develop a new discipline of doing rather than neglecting, every time we choose action over ease, labor over rest, we develop an increasing level of self-worth, self-respect, and self-confidence. It is how we feel about ourselves that provides us the greatest reward from any activity. It is not what we get that makes us valuable in terms of the result. It is what we become in the process of that activity that brings value into our lives. It is that satisfaction of saying, I did that regardless of if it was good or bad. It is activity. It is activity, action, taking action that converts a human dream into reality. And that conversation from idea to actuality gives a person personal value that can come in from no other source, right? So no matter how much we ponder, think, draw up all these ideas, if we never take and mold and push that into the marketplace, we will have no results, no value to the marketplace and to ourselves. Everything has a price and everything has a level of pain. But the price and the pain become easy when promises become strong. The promise of that better future he's referring to. Now we're going to also get into the ratio of activity to rest. So life can't be a process of all work and no rest, right? It is important to set aside sufficient time for us to regain our strength physically, mentally, and emotionally. The key is to develop a reasonable ratio from work to rest. The Bible suggests 6 days work, 1 day rest. For some, they have backed that down to 5 days of work and 2 days of rest. And some, in today's industry with technology and whatnot, would offer to work 4 days and rest 3 days. The fun part here is to find and test what works for you, with the caveat of knowing that in general, more work and activity leads to more accomplishment or completion towards your dreams, right? So that is just a really good kind of pause moment to say, I don't know if you've ever considered this, but I wrote this down in the book when I was going through it, the simple numbers. So we could work 7 days with no rest, 6, 1, 5, 2, 4, 3, 3, 4, and so on and so forth. Obviously, 0 days working and 7 days resting is not going to accomplish anything, but you can slowly work up the days in which you perceive the most effective for you to go after that desired goal or outcome. Now, I will say also as a rule of thumb, if you have massive dreams like making a Fortune 500 company or whatever the case is, that is going to take a certain amount of time and a certain amount of activity with what you're trying to go after. So just be mindful of this, right? The level, as it goes up and higher and higher and higher, the more work we're going to have to put in and the more time we're going to have to spend on it. That's not good or bad. That just is what it is. It's kind of like a universal law of nature. So we can begin to think, what is the best, right? What is it, a 5 and 2? Is it a 4 and 3? Is it a 6 and 1? Many people have found success in a lot of different things. But the one thing I will say for successful people, and I define successful people in this particular context as like the end result of building a company or accomplishing an Olympic feat or just some of the mammoth things, right? No matter what, those people had to work very smart and they had to work very, very hard. So that's just the price that you pay. There's no bullshit there. That just is what it is. So be mindful of that. Now, for the workaholics out there, and this is a workaholic in terms of you're putting off recovery pieces for your ability to continue to work. Recovery is as important as work, though. And this is the one thing that I drew up. This is not from Jim, but this is what I like to kind of phrase it as. So if we think of a race car going around a racetrack for a race, they don't do the first burst and try to run and drive the whole race in one fueling session. That wouldn't make any sense, right? A race car has pit stops throughout the race to provide sustainability for the whole race. In addition to those pit stops, race cars also don't race every single day throughout the year. They have a tour which they prepare for their working season. We can model a lot after that general concept, right? We can plan our working days and our off season, or further, we can plan time on the weekends and outside of our day where we can prepare for when we race. Preparation, work, preparation, work, preparation, work. Now, within that preparation can be recovery, right? You need to debrief and recover from said event. That is what we're talking a little bit about here. So even during a race or during a day or during a week, we can work in pit stop moments where we work hard for a set amount of time. And then once we feel we are losing our focus, we can take that pit stop. So each of us must select a ratio that best reflects the rewards we seek, remembering that with diminished labor come diminished rewards. If we rest for too long, the weeds will surely take over the garden. Let me say that one more time. If we rest too long, now flipping over to a gardening analogy, the weeds will surely take over the garden. The erosion of our value begins immediately whenever we are at rest. That is why we must take rest as a necessary pause and not a destination or an objective. The reason for that is because if we, again, lull too much in that recovery and in that rest, then we're going to kind of maybe get some cobwebs, not have the mental sharpness, all of that good stuff. And I know I've talked on this a little bit, maybe in other books or this one, but work allows us to refine our abilities. So it is a said net positive thing. Even though if we're not in something that we love, things kind of get, misrepresented in the sense of, oh, I have to go to work today. Well, this poses a whole nother gamut of questions, and another content in a video could conquer that. But knowing the work is good for us to reach our peak, and then as we're striving to reach that peak, we are then turning around and resting either during that race or taking some time off after we accomplish certain things. The last thing was a quote that he had written in here, and that is, "The punishment for excessive rest is mediocrity." So take that as you will. The danger of seeking shortcuts to success. And I think this is a very important piece because so many people want things quickly now, when in reality, some things may not actually be quick in nature. Some people within the personal development world, and I'm in this world, so I know, encourage us to believe that positive affirmation is more important than activity. They kind of present a lot of, let's say, morning and evening routines, and they talk a lot about how you structure your day and all that stuff with activities that are good for you, like meditation, for example, affirmations, reading, all that good stuff. But rather than doing something constructive, they suggest we first use those tools to get ready to go to work that lies ahead. Now, this is a very, very fine line because there are some practices that can get you into a more prepared state for work, which is a said positive, right? But if we're wasting too much time doing those things and not outputting the work, therein lies the issue. We must remember that discipline is a requirement for progress, meaning doing the things we need to do today for the progress of us tomorrow. And that affirmations without that discipline is the beginning of delusion. Meaning you can talk to yourself into something, but if you never have the action to kind of back that up, you might be erring on the side of delusion. So just to kind of work this back in, there's nothing wrong with leveraging those things to increase our probability towards success, but affirmations, meditation, and all that stuff should never be a substitute for activity. With this, Jim provides 2 rules. First, we should never allow affirmation to replace action. Always have the action number 1 with the affirmation after that. Second, whatever we are affirming must be something either inherently true or something we are trying to attain as a better version of ourselves. So if we, let's say for example, we say one day, like, I am wealthy. I want to be wealthy. But then if we don't put the work in to get to becoming wealthy in our definition, that is what becomes self-delusion, because you're telling yourself something that isn't inherently true because you're not working towards it. Another example is if our lives are spinning out of control and there's a lot of bad shit, a lot of escapism, let's say. Instead of facing the harsh reality, we try to affirm our way out of it. Or if there are major problems, we could say to ourselves, oh, everything's good, and we're just floating like a butterfly in la la land. That's not as effective as facing the truth, facing the harsh reality to then move forward. So, to further this piece, reality is always the best beginning. Truth is always the best beginning. Reality is always the best beginning. Within reality is the possibility of our own personal miracles. The power of faith starts with reality. If we can bring ourselves to the state of truth about ourselves and our circumstances, then the truth will set us free. Once we finally accepted and understood the truth, the promise of the future is then freed from the shackles of deception. Just to kind of round this out, once we really understand how we got to be where we are and how we are constructed, we begin to take responsibility for everything, or we can and we should take responsibility for everything. That is the process from going pennies to fortunes in this particular verbatim. Okay, so now we have two things here, and then that will round out the video. I appreciate you guys tagging along and having some fun here. So this one's really cool too. Our own dream, or this is called harnessing the vision of the future. Our own dreams can be as breathtaking and powerful as the wonder of nature, but they must be also harnessed and converted into some form of energy if they are to have any value to ourselves and in the world. Kind of going back to earlier, if we are not taking and converting our ideas and our energy into action, we are wasting that value. We all say that we want to succeed, but sooner or later, our level of activity must be equal to our intention into the world. Talking about achievement is one thing, making it happen is something altogether different. Some people may take more joy in talking about success or past successes than they do achieving it. It is as though their ritualistic chant about someday or someday in the past lulls them into a false sense of security, and all the things they should be doing and could be doing on any given day never seem to get done because they are in some ways frozen in those particular achievements, again, whether current or past. The consequence of this self-delusion has its own price. If we don't take some form of action, we will look back with regret to all the things we should have done and and that we procrastinated. That is why we must push ourselves in the present to experience the milder pain of discipline, doing the things we don't want to do and doing the things we do want to do. We will all experience pain in one way or another, the pain of discipline or the pain of regret. But the difference is that the pain of discipline weighs only in ounces as far as today goes, while the pain of regret weighs in tons. And everybody knows that there are certain things that they regret that they could wish to do, and that does weigh a lot on us, right? Instead of just taking care of business in the present day and have it only weigh ounces. Activity, therefore, is the application of all we know and all we feel, combined with our desire to have more than what we have and become more than what we are. That is what we will be exploring in this piece and have explored in this piece to the life puzzle. So I really like that definition of activity because it's so motivating to hear that, right? It's so motivating to hear that. The application of all that we know and all that we feel combined with our desire to have more than we have currently and become more than we are. What a cool promise. And to conclude this episode, we will end with somewhat of a motivational piece from Jim, which I really, really like this. So I'm going to take my time to kind of gather here. So, any day we wish, we can discipline ourselves to change it all. Any day we wish, we can open the book that will open our mind to new knowledge. Any day we wish, we can start a new activity. Any day we wish, we can start the process of life change. We can do it immediately or next week, next month, or next year. We can also do nothing. We can pretend rather than perform. And if the idea of having to change ourselves make us uncomfortable and we don't face that small pain of action, we will remain as we are. We can choose rest over labor, entertainment over education, delusion over truth, and doubt over confidence. The choices are ours to make. But while we curse the effect, we continue to nourish the cause. As Shakespeare uniquely observed, the fault is not in our stars, but in ourselves. Love that. So let me break that down just a touch, and then we'll get this fully concluded. We can choose the things that make us feel good, the rest, the entertainment, the delusion of truth, all of those things. However, with that, we can also choose the labor, the education, and the confidence. And that is all up to us, which should be very exciting. We created the past circumstances by our past choices. We have both the ability and responsibility to make clear choices beginning today. Those in search of the good life do not need more answers or more time to think things over to reach better conclusions, even though those things are inherently valuable. The simple needed truth, or they simply need truth, action, and the ability to analyze their results so they can get better each day and every day. We cannot allow our errors in judgment repeated daily to lead us down the wrong path. We must continue to keep coming back to the basics that make the most difference in our lives, with arguably the most important basic, which is activity. So I hope you guys enjoyed activity part 1. Put a lot of work into this, and I think is a very juicy episode. If you are not reading the book, definitely go back and listen and kind of write out the things that come to mind. But I appreciate you guys reading along with me, and let's get to activity part 2. Thanks.